Okay, awesome. Thank you for the housekeeping items, Emily. So we're really, really excited to have our panelists here today, especially to provide us another perspective into future careers in football. And just to briefly introduce everyone to who OWIFA or what OWIFA is, the Ontario Women's Intercollegiate Football Association is a not-for-profit competitive women's flag football league here in Ontario, Canada. And what makes our association so unique is that we act as a voice by women for women to have a varsity experience in football potentially in the future. We're not quite there yet, but we're working towards it, hence why this association exists. Although we are very, very fortunate to have from our 2019-2020 season, over 400 athletes and over 70 coaches participating in our league. So we've grown and we've managed to give our athletes and coaches an awesome experience in football, both playing and learning more about the game. So that's just one of our many goals. And of course, I have the luxury of working with an amazing team to make this possible. So I'm Olivia Gosway. I'm a PhD student at Western University. I'm also an athlete, and I oversee this league as the league commissioner. And Emily is our VP of events, and she's been awesome at putting things like this together so that we can focus on career development for our athletes in lieu of not having a season. So I'll pass it back to her.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Olivia. Like I said earlier, my name's Emily. I'm a fourth year student at Queen's pursuing a Bachelor of Arts and in concurrent education as well. So I'm looking to be a teacher, hopefully. And like Olivia said, I'm the Vice President External of Events for OWIFA. So the sort of idea around this Women in Careers weekend was, like Olivia mentioned, in lieu of not having a season, we wanted to figure out a way to keep our athletes, coaches, community members feeling connected to one another in a time where we can't physically get on the field and play. So this event series, along with our virtual COVID Cup that you can see in our little backgrounds, is a way to keep up the engagement, and we planned it to celebrate what would have been the start of our 2021 season. So as many of our athletes are graduating, we hope that this event will be a great resource and way to explore opportunities in football and focus, like Olivia said, on career development. So with that being said, I'm going to toss it back to Olivia to start off with some rapid fire questions.
All right, so just to warm things up, I encourage all of our panelists to either, you could say your response, yes or no. Most of them are yes or no questions. You can provide a emoji or a reaction response that you can see at the bottom of your screen there on the Zoom panel as well. So feel free to use either or, feel free to unmute yourself with this. And then of course, I'm gonna open up the poll for our audience members so that they can also participate and get a feel of maybe what they're experiencing in terms of considering a career in football. So I'm gonna launch that poll. Hopefully everyone can see that. And now I'm going to engage with with our panelists and ask them a few questions. Okay, so my first question for you is that a yes or no? I would rather be working on the administrative side than directly on the field.
No. Definitely want to bang.
Yeah.
Can't do it anymore.
I'm
So
like
hard.
Half.
Yeah, half for me too.
Nice. Okay. Was your journey to your career easy?
No.
No.
Yep. Okay. And have you applied your education to your current career in football?
No.
Really? Okay.
No.
That's just a lot, especially for in a education not related to football, that they can actually make that transition in the future. So that's awesome to hear. Yes or no? You've learned more about football working behind the scenes than watching or playing yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay. Yes or no? It took a number of years to fully transition into the work that you do in football until you felt more comfortable with it or actually knew all the ins and outs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so it doesn't happen overnight. That's good to know. Was football always your go-to sport?
Yes.
No.
It was. Played everything else in between, but definitely was.
And Laurence, you played rugby. You actually did quite a few sports. Rugby, track.
Yeah, I played rugby, but my first sport, my first love was track and field.
Yeah. There you go. Awesome. It's nice to hear just a little bit of the behind the scenes there. Have you ever been mansplained before when it came to your career, came to your football concepts you've learned, anything like that? Oh, nice. I'm glad Ameena has an experience.
I haven't, not yet.
Not yet. That's great. Has networking been essential for you to find an opportunity in your career today?
Yes.
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 Yeah. Sometimes for a lot of us who don't really know how to get in the field, it might be actually helpful to hear that you may not necessarily need to know all the right people yet, but can take some time to get there. Is DeAndre Hopkins in your top 5, if you're able to answer?
Yes.
Top 5 receivers.
I don't know.
Okay. And work hard or play hard?
Both.
Both.
It's got to be both.
Yeah.
It's a motto. It's a mantra. Okay, awesome. So that just wraps up the rapid fire. Nice, good little warm up there. And then it's always nice to see. So I'll share the results so that everyone can kind of see what the answers were. And then our panelists can get a feel of what people are interested or wanting to know more about. So a lot would rather play the game, but definitely a few that want to find some career opportunities. Again, we're working with a lot of athletes in OEFA, so that transition out of the game that will be very, very hard. So hearing more about career opportunities will be very important. Many are worried about starting a career in football. A lot do want to apply their education to potentially a career in football. Not many understand what football operations actually means. So hopefully each of you can kind of describe your everyday to-day work and exactly what that looks like for our audience members. So that might be a great insight to have. Football was not the go-to sport for many of our listeners today. Many find it hard to even visualize how to transition to a career in football. So maybe hearing your personal experiences will be very beneficial as well. Many do feel like they can find the right networks. So that's good to hear. So they know where to look potentially. Maybe you can provide some more resources throughout today's talk. See DeAndre Hopkins in their top 5 NFL receivers, and many want to work hard over play hard. So I'll stop sharing those results there. And we'll move right into asking some questions. So Emily, you can take over from here.
Yeah, perfect. So first off, thank you for all of our panelists for joining us today. I just want to give you guys the opportunity to introduce yourselves. You know yourselves the best, and we'd like to hear more from you. That's the purpose of today. So I'm going to start off with Laurence. If you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got to the position that you're in today.
So my name is Laurence Pontbriand. I'm the manager of football and officiating development at the CFL. Also a former national team player. I say former, but I haven't decided yet if I was retired from tackle football. I got to the position that I am today by going to the 2018 Women's in Football Career Forum organized by the NFL. At the moment, some people from the CFL in football operations went there to see what it looked like and potentially organize something like that for the CFL, and then also to potentially hire a woman in football operation. So I got to meet them there, and then I guess it just connected, and I started working for the CFL just a couple, I guess, months later.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laurence. I'm going to go next to Ameena. So same question, if you just want to introduce yourself a little bit and maybe how you got to your current position.
Yep. So my name is Amina Salman. I'm a player personnel coordinator for the Eagles. I started off working as a student intern at Temple University for my 4 years of undergrad, GA'd there, and then I spent some time at the league office in New York. So I was there for about 8 months after that, and then went to the Eagles from there. Most of my current duties involve scouting and operations.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ameena. And then last but not least, we have Desiree Abrams here. So if you want to go ahead and same question.
Yeah, so just first want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak with everyone. I'm so excited and see some familiar faces on the call, so feel free to chat me on the side. Desiree Abrams, live out of Washington, D.C. I am a current NCAA and NCAA football official, and I recently had experience as a replay assistant for the NFL Washington football team as a replay assistant. I am a former player of 2 world champion football teams, the DC Divas and Atlanta Explosion, and a former flag player, getting my start with Simply Marvelous out of Florida A&M University. Very much a player turned official, like a rapper turned singer, and didn't think that this was going to be something that I was going to transition into. But after the NFL exposed me to the NFL Football Officiating Academy, which actually my general manager of the DC Divas told me, he's like, be a good idea to learn a little bit more about the rules. As a defensive end, I really just wanted to know what I could get away with. But as they started talking about the different positions on the field and what the officials actually see in their responsibilities, I knew it was a perfect transition to when I was ready to step off the field. So here I am now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Desiree. So as you guys can see, we have people from all walks of life here, all different little niches within the overall category of football operations. So feel free, if you guys have any questions, to put them right there in the chat, and we can call up on you to ask them. I'm going to go ahead with another quick question for all of you. So another general question. Obviously we're here because you're inspiring. We love what you girls are doing within the football field. So what was your first win that made you confident that you were doing the right thing, that you knew that this was where you should be? And we can go ahead with Laurence first.
It's a hard question for me, but the first thing that comes to mind is how easy and how comfortable I felt dealing with the officials. Great group of guys, very talented, very smart people, and just being around them and trying to do everything I can to make their life as easy as possible, as smooth as possible. I think what made me realize that I was doing the right thing.
Awesome. All right. And then Ameena, do you want to add?
Yeah, I'm trying to think most specifically to my current role, I guess. I mean, I've only been scouting for a couple of years, so I'm still kind of new in the process, but I won't say who the players are, but I had a hot take about 2 players that we were looking at as a team. And I wasn't sure about it. I was on the fence about whether I was going to put it there. So I ranked 2 players differently than everyone else on the staff had them ranked. And then I ended up being right. So I was hyped, just kind of the way everything played out during the season. So that's probably it for my current role right now.
No, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
I'm trying to figure out who those 2 athletes were, but
we're out here. Okay, and Desiree, go ahead.
So there have been a lot of little things that boost your confidence as an official along the way. The first time you start or stop the clock correctly, the first time you call an illegal player downfield or have a crew saver if you notice that the clock didn't start or something like that. But I think so far the biggest one for me was at the 2017 IFAF Women World Championships, Tackle World Championships, where as a former player, a lot of the Team USA and Team Canada players, I played with or played against for a number of years. And after leaving the field to put on the stripes, it kind of was seeming to them like, why would you do that? Like, we don't like officials. Why would you go over there and do that? But at the end of the games, at the championships, they honored the officials by giving us, a small memento. And when I went up to receive mine, Team USA and Team Canada gave me a standing ovation, clapped. It was a real tearjerker for me. It made me feel like I was doing the right thing and that I had the respect of my peers.
Yeah, so just to follow up with you, Desiree, just from what you're saying, as someone who's moving into officiating, for example, what were like those potential resources that made you feel more confident when you got out onto the field, to make that transition out of playing and being like, I know these rules, I can make those decisions that many people might hate as a player, and to be ready to do that role.
Right. Well, I think being a player definitely helps, right? The fact that you know the basic cadence of the game, how players respond to things, how coaches respond to things, it's really, really helpful. It gets you in the groove. If you know what to expect of all the yelling and, all the energy on the sideline. The NFL Football Officiating Academy was really, really nice. It took 10 weeks, once a week. We would go in and spend 3 hours and just break down every single position, every element of the game. So you had a deeper understanding that you may not necessarily get as a player from an administrative standpoint, how the game is supposed to flow. And then after the academy concluded, being associated with a group that was going to support me in my initial development. So for high school, I joined the Eastern Board of Officials, which happens to be the oldest African-American operated officials association in the country. And they just took me under their wing. They already had a female official that had, already broken barriers as far as the NCAA and DC public schools. So she served as a mentor, and because we are a crew on the field, we really are the third team. We can't work together in silos. We actually have to work together. So everybody on the field wants everybody to be great. So you pull that other official along. They're going to make mistakes when they're young along the way, but the small things, they'll celebrate with you and encourage you by putting you on more and more games.
Yeah, so any of our attendees listening in and thinking of a career in officiating, Desiree is the person to ask and talk to for sure, considering I don't know if you want to share your backstory eventually about how you go out and actually recruit more women in officiating, but just finding that network is really, really important to supporting your growth. And there are a few in Ontario, and we can connect people with that after. Moving to Ameena, I want to know a bit more about especially coming from Temple and then your experiences there. What were the skills or asset or like key attributes that you think you had to carry moving into working with the Eagles and being able to do your job the best that you could?
I mean, in terms of intangibles, it's more or less the same thing. You're obviously around the sport and it's a team thing, and we're all working long hours and kind of sacrifice that work-life balance thing to be able to do what we do. What I will say though is that what I did at Temple is not what I did here. It's a weird backstory, but basically I was in football operations and recruiting at Temple. So everything off field, from like planes, hotels, catering, helping with academics, official visits and all that. And then I ended up, so when I was interviewing for the Eagles position after the league office, they told me it was an ops internship. So I went in and they kept asking me about scouting, and I was like, I thought this was an ops internship. It wasn't. So at that point, I didn't think I was going to get that job. And out of the pool of people that interviewed, I probably wasn't the most qualified. Ended up getting it. And basically, and I was like, hey, I haven't done it, but I'm willing to learn what I have to learn. So I ended up getting that job, and they kind of explained to me later that it was more taking the bet on my ceiling rather than taking the kid that might be ready now, but they don't think could grow as much or learn as much or whatever it was. So a lot of the things that I did my first year were more similar to what I did at Temple. So I was helping with ops. I was doing a lot with scouting administration, and then was learning how to scout on the side when I had time. And then basically I actually started putting in my evaluations and whatnot in my second and third year. So that's kind of what I'm doing now.
Right. So you definitely learned along the way then with that scouting role, for example. Okay, that's really interesting, and hopefully it sparks some good questions in our audience, and I'm seeing them pop up now. But I want to move to Laurence with another question, especially because not many people understand what football development and officiating development means in the aspect of a national league like the CFL. So could you provide some more insight as to what that job looks like, and some of the things that you think maybe a student at a university can actually apply to a job like that?
Yeah, absolutely. First, the officiating department, I see it a little bit like any football operation department in a team. You really have to be able to look ahead, look like 2-3 years ahead of time, because you can't stick with only the officials that you have right now. So a little bit like on a team, you have your current players, you're constantly evaluating them. You have your more rookie players that, you're trying to really make sure they're feeling comfortable doing what they're doing. And then you have the prospect players that are currently U Sport level or NCAA level. It's the same thing for us, officials that are officiating at U Sport or officiating high school or CJFL game. We have a lot of people working for us across the country, looking at those people, making sure we're not missing anybody. They're writing reports and then they send it back to us. And then every year we try to invite new prospects at our training camp, just like the teams do. They invite new players to their training camp, and then if those players are good enough or if those officials are good enough, they're staying and they make the final roster. For football, it's a little bit different. I'm really big on targeting the grassroots, and we have partnered with PHE Canada, which is Physical and Health Education Canada, to work on developing resources for all physical education teacher across Canada, make those resources free if they want to teach football in school. And for me, that's the best way to reach like everybody in Canada, is to start really young and in school.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always nice to have a Canadian on our panel, just because OWIFA is in Ontario, and that's great for all of the future teachers like myself who are maybe in this audience, because that could lead into like more coaching opportunities as well at different levels, those physical and health education resources. So I believe you have a teaching background, right?
I do, so I'm even bigger on that.
Yeah, perfect. So Laurence is a great resource for all of that sort of thing. Anyone looking to, if we have any current teachers, anyone looking to start their own flag football team. I'm going to go ahead and start taking some questions from the audience. So I'm going to ask Taylor, would you like to come on and just ask your question?
Yeah, for sure. So just hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. Like, this is such a phenomenal panel and a phenomenal group of women, and I'm just honored that you guys are here today. I was just wondering what you think are the top 3 characteristics that you should, highlight on a resume or in an interview if you're looking to, get a job or an internship in football ops.
I can definitely start. I'm currently hiring interns, so it's a great question for me. I think what I'm looking when I'm looking at a resume is if someone is passionate about football or just sport in general, and if they're able to show that in their work experience. If someone send me their resumes and there's nothing related to sport, and I don't see why I should believe them that they're truly passionate about sport or about football. So that's really the one thing that I'm looking at. And the other really important thing for me is attention to details. In football operations, we have to send all sorts of reports to the general managers, and obviously those reports have to be perfect. So attention to details is definitely a key skills that you need to have.
Yeah, I'm right on with you with the attention to detail. That's been one of the things that I think we've seen become more important over the last couple of years. And it's one of the things where you can ask them and you can look at their work experience. But I mean, it's certain things, if you're spelling the person's name right when you're sending the email to them, if you have all the right info on your resume, everything's spelled right and things like that. And that's easy, right? You're just making sure it's right on your resume. If you can't get that right, I don't know what we can trust you to get right once you're in the door. And also, again, what she said, being in football. The other thing I'll say too is this is kind of like a smaller thing, but when you're at an interview, a lot of things, when you say like, I did, and you worked for a team, a lot of times using we language, even if you're the main one that did something or the main one that completed a task, we'll listen to if you're saying me, I versus we, us, when you're talking about team related things. And obviously you want somebody with a team oriented mentality. So that's one of the things we'll look for too.
That's great. Thank you both. Desiree, do you have anything to add?
Well, when it comes to, from an officiating aspect, I'm going to tell you that there is a shortage of officials, the world over. Like there's not enough. So you sometimes don't even have to interview to become an official. They're like, oh, we got a youth game, you can work, get some stripes, step on the field, here's a whistle, work it out. But at the grassroots level, truly, like there are groups that are going to need assistance, right? And so they're looking for officials. Even the officials that they have may not always be readily available. So they're looking for people that they can bring into the fold, train, and rely on. As you begin to develop your brand, because I truly do believe as an official, although you work in groups, you are an individual that stands for something. So as you continue to develop your brand, and I love that statement about paying attention to detail, it's those small things that set you apart as an official and how you administer a game, how you pay attention to player health, how you pay attention to coaching concerns, how you dress. All of those things will make an impact, because a lot of the way you advance as an official is word of mouth. So if you're working on the grassroots level, somebody used to say like, hey, you'd probably be a good fit for high school. And then you start moving into the high school arena. Once you're in high school, you can start going to collegiate clinics and start being introduced to the collegiate atmosphere. A lot of college officials come back and teach high school. They pull you into the fold, and then eventually you're recommended to a college assigner. And then if you're looking at CFL or NFL kind of work, it takes time, but the networking, again, your brand and your attention to details, the thing that's going to actually pull you in to be considered for an actual position with these upper level institutions.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's really helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Attention to detail, definitely using team language when talking about team sports. And yeah, honestly, just being consistent with yourself, with your brand. Earlier in the weekend, we were talking with Kimmy Checks, who mentioned that showing a little bit of who you are and your individuality is also like a part of your brand and very important to employers. So that's all great advice. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to go to our next audience question from Meg Walsh, if you want to come on and ask.
Awesome. Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm Megan. I'm a player within OWIFA as well as on the exec team. And I'm just kind of wondering how much football, like technical knowledge, I mean, I know for reffing it has to be pretty high, but within the operations career, how much of that football or technical knowledge do you need to get started in the career, and how much of that research or work to have that knowledge are you doing on the daily basis? Also, do you ever feel like you need to do extra to cement your place in football, like a typically men's world?
I can talk about ours in terms of technical stuff. Like I said earlier, I didn't have the technical background, so I kind of got lucky in that position that they were willing to say, like, you don't have the technical knowledge right now, you'll figure it out. And that's kind of when I started learning. I will say that not all teams do that. And from a scouting perspective, there's not a lot you can do to kind of get that technical knowledge unless you have another job in scouting. So a lot of times at the entry level, so like as training camp interns, or temps or scouting assistants, you have kind of like a little bit more of a runway to figure it out, just because there's not a lot of people that are going to be ready to do it as soon as you get in the door. I would say in that process, kind of like I explained with mine, as I was getting up to speed, I was still providing value in other areas. So being willing to kind of split your time to learn what you need to learn is kind of how it is on that. And I'll say for ops too, since I spent some time with that, it was less technical knowledge that you needed. Most of that I kind of learned on the job, figuring out what to do there. In terms of doing extra, I've been pretty lucky in my organization that I haven't felt like I've had to do a lot more, aside from having to kind of learn scouting while I was helping out my first year. Other than that, I've been pretty lucky with the people I've been surrounded with.
Amazing. Laurence, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think Ameena really covered it. Football ops, you don't need that much technical knowledge, but it's always good to have a little bit. Of course, it helps. And then she would know better than me for scarring, but definitely when I'm working with the officials and sometimes evaluating them, of course you need to have a little bit of technical background, but that's nothing that you cannot learn on the spot. Like that's, if you're interested in a game and passionate, you'll get to know that those technical things and it will come. You don't have to have a huge background to start off.
Yeah, absolutely. And Desiree, as an official, do you have a different perspective on Meg's question?
Yes. So, the great thing about officiating, you really are like a multitasker when it comes to your profession. Like there may be 0.5% of officials that don't have another job or another technical skill that they do the majority of the day, right? This is an avocation. It's like my background's in animal science and veterinary medicine. That's what I do during the day. And then as soon as 4 o'clock hits, it's all football, all study. You don't have to come in knowing the sport. You don't have to come in knowing the positionings on the field, any of that stuff, particularly when it comes to something like replay. So Dean Blandino, who's worked with the XFL, the NFL, and NCAA, he's never taken a snap in his life, but he is the godfather of replay. And everybody turns to him for his expertise. Like he's trained hundreds of officials across the country. And it's just, can you take guidance and advice? Can you apply what you've learned? Try not to make the same mistake over and over and be able to work with a team. It really is just about you being flexible, again, having the passion and wanting to do it. We can teach you what you need to know. Just come in ready.
Amazing. Thank you so much, you guys. And I just wanted to say, like, I'm so happy to hear, Ameena, that your organization that you work with is so welcoming and doesn't put all these pressures on you. It's really refreshing to hear because I hear a lot of the time that people do feel like they need to do more as a woman.
Really, really great responses. It's definitely something that we can take with us and apply, which is really nice to hear. And we do have another question from the audience that I would like to welcome up Katie to ask her question because she's tuning in from overseas and her experiences. So go ahead, Katie.
Hi, everyone. My name's Katie. I am a Laurier alumni. I'm currently in Scotland doing my teaching program and my teaching degree for French and Spanish. Over here, a lot of the talk is rugby. And I adore the fact that they treat women and men over here as complete equals when it comes to the rugby scene. But back home, I was part of the Laurier varsity team. We didn't really get a lot of respect in that aspect for it. I also come from a town where girls don't play football. It is a men's sport, and I have been offered a job with the school board back home. And I want to change that. I want to allow women and ladies to have the opportunity to have a position where they can play. I know that Toronto has flag teams for their girls. So I would love to implement that, but I'm just not sure how to take that approach into a new school board. So yeah, if anyone has anything to help.
Maybe Laurence, you can comment because you come from that teaching background and development as well with the CFL, so could similarly apply with those grassroots programs. Yeah,
I was actually going to say that you should ask Olivia and Emily how to do that because they have done an amazing job with OIFA. I mean, it's hard to answer. I guess when you're passionate about something and you truly believe in something, there's nothing can stop you. And one thing I will say is that if you surround yourself with the right people, you're definitely going to be able to start that league without any issue. If you surround yourself with people that are like Debbie Downers and are not sure that they can do that, it's just not going to work. So my advice for you, I'm just going to say this, surround yourself with the right people and stick to your teaching French career.
Desiree, because I want to hear like your perspective too on, maybe you can chime in on how you went around to get more women in officiating, for example, as a way to translate maybe recruiting more young athletes in the game of football.
Yeah, so NWFOA, we seek to promote women's tackle and flag football through excellent officiating. And that's whether you're a male or female. You know, for all of you that have been on teams, you know how much time and commitment it takes to have practices each week, to get everybody on one accord, to travel to a game site. As a former player, I completely respect that. And the worst thing to have is to go into a game and not have appropriate officiating, you know, things that can either physically harm you because they're not paying attention to safety, or you may feel like it shorts you because a call is missed and essentially costs you the game, although the game is made up of hundreds of little plays, right? It's not just one event. So what NWFOA seeks to do is include people from all different walks to try to support women's football. Now, with that, obviously, we have a special emphasis program that brings in. And as I would go to tournaments, I would notice that I'm the only one, or maybe there's a second one. I was like, there has to be more people out here that are working flag, that are working high school, that are working NCAA. So with the help of the Women Officiating Now program through the NFL that's now sunset, I got to meet a great group of female officials that are amazing. Like, I already knew who my top 5 for the Super Bowl are, or my top 7 for the Super Bowl. Absolutely. I know who I'm going to ask to be on or vote for to be on the field. But working that network and finding out who they know, or like who may possibly be interested in coming in, my organization actually took individuals, and working with some of the women's tackle leagues, we provided all female crews for those games. So it gave them an opportunity to work NCAA rules or NFL or high school rules in the football off season. So it allowed them a chance to refine their skills. We also did this with flag football as well, for those who wanted to get in and didn't necessarily want the same level of stress that tackle football may initially incite. I traveled myself across the country for the last 3 years, trying to find individuals and work with them and see what their skill level was. It allows me to recommend them to where they should go if they don't have a support system where they are, and make people, you know that they're out there. Like, any woman that has success, we try to help promote that. Like, if you did work the game, like one of my good friends, Courtney Orr, she worked NAIA women's collegiate flag football game a couple of weeks ago. Like, I'm pushing that. I'm promoting, like, everybody check out her stream. And you know, it's not a thing like whether you feel she does good or bad. She's getting the experience. She's getting out there. She's getting the work, which means that she's only going to get better. She's only going to become well known. I'm of the mind that officials should promote themselves. There are some things that, you know, we have to do, as we have to stay stoic. We are the professionals on the field. But I still think that you should let everybody know the amount of time and dedication that you put into this work. We don't just show up. Like, there's easily 20 to 30 hours put into preparing for game day. So we love the game just like you do.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for your answers. Thanks, Katie, for a great question. I see that you're so pumped now to get football rolling in Southern Ontario. So Ameena, I have a question for you now. So in your position, which is typically considered quite a boys' club, how do you think that you got your foot in the door? Like, what do you think got you your job from your experience?
I will say, and I say this all the time when I talk about football in general, especially the NFL, but everyone does know everybody. And before I even walked in the building, they called everyone they knew at Temple and everyone they knew at the league office who I crossed over with to kind of figure out what my deal was. And I think if I hadn't done a good job in what I had done there, regardless of what the position was, just in terms of like work ethic and how I was as a coworker, I don't think I would have even gotten the interview. In general, your reputation will follow you everywhere you go in football, but I can say for sure, like in the NFL, and your reputation is going to get there before you get there. And I can say I'm really detail oriented, but if my old boss said I wasn't, that's who they're going to believe. So I think that helped, that I was kind of had people behind me that were sticking up for me. And like I said, the people that brought me in, and they're the people that are still here for the most part, they were, and this kind of trickles down from ownership too, that as long as you can do the job and you can do it at a high level, they don't really care who you are. We have another girl in scouting on our staff named Catherine Ray. She's actually Canadian. She does a great job for us. So there's us two in scouting. We have two in football ops, one trainer, one nutritionist, one player engagement. So like between all the women, I think there's like 9 of us, which is pretty high as teams go all on the football side. But in general, it's not really a thing that's come up very much. I've been pretty lucky in that sense. And I will say that that's not representative of all teams. Some teams are more known to be more open-minded and progressive. I know the Vikings are another one that's known just to be like, if you can do the job, you're going to get hired. It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like. But there's some teams that are kind of at the forefront of that. And I think we're getting there in terms of trying to get up there. So I've been lucky pretty much in my experience.
Yeah, I'm just going to add to that, because I'm curious, with your experiences at Temple, what was it like that you did to initiate that experience? Did you send someone an email? Were you like, I guess you did mention an internship, but was that something that you actively looked for? Any recommendations for our attendees to maybe figure out where to start?
So I was at the league office right before I got to the Eagles, and basically I liked it there. I did player personnel, which was more kind of like salary cap CBA stuff. They knew I wanted to go back to the team side. I had talked to them about it and I was like, I like it. I just miss it. And if there's any time I'm going to be doing the crazy work-life balance, I'd rather be now while I'm still in my 20s. So they knew I wanted to do it and were kind of looking out for experiences for me. They heard of the internship opportunity with the Eagles, connected me with them to get the interview in there. And then it kind of went from there. So they were the ones that set me up with the person that I needed to talk to.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's good. Just like, if you have an idea of where you feel like you'll, what's the word I'm looking for? Be successful in, then that's the one you want to pursue. And it's okay to ask and kind of chip away to ask people to be like, yeah, I want to be in that area, so put me in there. Okay, awesome. Go ahead, Emily.
All right, I'm going to throw it back over to Laurence with a question. So what is your vision? Do you have a vision for like 5-10 years for developing football within the professional and amateur landscape?
My ultimate dream would be to have my own development department in Montreal, have people spending 100% of their time developing either officials or just football in general. I think we're getting there. We're not there yet. We still have a lot of work, to do, considering this year with the pandemic. We just need to get back on our feet. But yeah, long-term goal is definitely to have my own department and having people working full-time doing that. I'm also on a more personal side working very hard right now to have a tackle league develop in Quebec and maybe Ontario. That's taking a lot of my time, but yeah, that's what I'm seeing for the future.
That's amazing. I mean, I know as a WFOA, we have our own goals for football here in Ontario, so it's really interesting to hear what you have in mind for Quebec over the next couple of years. I'm sure we'll have a lot of converts going over there to join you pretty soon when they can't play anymore, but that's awesome. Interesting question that just came in from Cassandra. If you're comfortable, Cass, I'll let you ask all of our panelists.
This is kind of a question that my American cousins always used to ask me when I started to play football. It's like, oh, you should push to like petition the Olympics to have football, like do it, like you love football. They're huge Philly Eagle fans too, which was hilarious. They got me into sport in the first place. But yeah, it's kind of like not only to the panelists, but to the group. It's like, do we ever think that football will make the Olympic stage? And yeah, like what that path would even look like. I don't know. I just think it's always an interesting question to ask.
Yeah, I do believe that flag will make the Olympic stage, absolutely. As you may know, that for the World Games in 2022, there will be flag football. That is, their flag football 5-on-5 is a style that's played all over the world. So that's something we can all come together. And now, as far as tackle football, there's Canadian style tackle football, there's American style tackle football, and there may be others. It just depends on where they want to look to go for it. But for flag, absolutely, it's coming down the line, and I'm so excited for it. Can't wait.
Did anyone else want to add to that, Laurence?
I'd love to see tackle football at the Olympic, but unfortunately, with the way it works right now, I don't think it would be possible to have 12 on 12 or 11 on 11. A little bit like rugby, 15 on 15. It takes too much time to recover from one game. It would make too long tournament. So they adapted to 7 on 7. So maybe eventually, if you want to see tackle football at the Olympics, we would have to change the format. Quicker games and less people on the field and a smaller field. But right now, I think flag football is definitely a good option for the Olympics. And I think in 2028, they were thinking about having flag football as a demonstration sport. So hopefully that happens.
Well, that definitely makes everyone a bit more hopeful about potentially what's next after football, at least at a player level, because sometimes we see the end of our university days here in Ontario and then that coming to a close, which is really unfortunate for women in the game. So I guess we're coming to the end of our panel. I'm going to let anyone else try to pop in a few last questions if they want to in the chat. But on that note, we really want our audience members or listeners to take away something that they can then apply for when they want to move into either one of your roles. So what is one piece of advice you would have given yourself 5 years ago, or you would give our attendees to really get their foot in the right door and through the door? So I'll start with Desiree.
So I would say start now. start early, start now. If you're thinking about it and just want to give it a try, go ahead and do so. You know, we all know that we can be in different stages and you may not have time to go all in, but at least, you know, get a feel or connect with somebody that's in the part of the industry that you're interested in and just connect with them. You know, once a month, every other week. Go, if you're interested in officiating, go visit them at a game and stand with them on the sideline and just hear what they're processing and what it looks like. Volunteer for a chain crew. There's so many ways that you can still stay connected without diving in, but once you're ready to dive in, allow them to shape and mold you, and you'll really, really enjoy yourself. I'll say there's no one I've met that's ever regretted jumping in. So just start now. Find a mentor, find a support group, and push forward.
Yeah, so just don't be afraid to send that first email, make that first call to just get your foot in the door.
We want you. We want you here, man. Come on over.
I love it. Yeah. So that's awesome. And then Ameena, did you want to add your piece of advice?
Yeah, and I kind of touched on this earlier, but the reputation thing is important. And it's not to say that who you are is what people think of you, but that's what's going to get passed around about who you are in your career. So obviously building relationships with people that you work with. And I would say too, kind of going off of Desiree's point, making connections with people that maybe you don't need help from right now. Maybe you'll need it in 2 years. Like send an email out. People like doing informational interviews. And it's not to just say like, hey, do you have a job? It's like, hey, can we connect? And maybe connecting with 3 people in a department is going to be like, all right, well, that's not the department I want to get into. And it can kind of help you narrow down your career path. And I can say I did that. I actually thought I wanted to be a sports agent for a while. And I talked to a bunch of agents and I was like, okay, well, no, not for me. But that process helped me kind of go through the elimination process and at least figure out what I didn't want to do. So obviously making a good impression on everyone that you interact with, but also expanding your network of those people that you do interact with, to kind of have like a bigger group of people that can kind of get on the table for you.
I'm just curious, once you've made those or established those networks or those contacts, what do you do with that next? Like, especially when you're applying for a job, do you mention that you spoke to this person? Do you take exactly what they said and apply it in what you're interviewing for, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your nature of the relationship with the person, but I mean, if it's somebody that you have a close relationship with and they can either plug you in with somebody who's hiring or give you some tips about kind of things that they look for. One of the things I do just to keep my name, or what I did earlier to kind of keep my name on people's radars, is when I was in college, I sent like good luck this season notes to like all the pro and college coaches that I knew at other schools, just because like it came on like those cool little recruiting place cards, and I sent them out and just said like, hey, I hope you guys have a good season or a good camp or whatever it was. And it's to not be like aggressive and emailing them every 15 minutes, but if you have that group of people and you check in with them twice a year, chances are if it circles back around and that's someone you're interviewing with or someone that at least knows somebody that you're interviewing with, that can help you in the long run.
Oh, that's an awesome tip. I would have never thought of just even like, I think someone else in another panel mentioned even a handwritten letter is often really, really recognized nicely when looking for a job or thinking back to that person and be like, oh, I did, that's memorable. So that's really, really cool to hear, and hopefully something tangible for our listeners. And Laurence, what would you like to add as a piece of advice?
A little bit like Ameena and Desiree mentioned, just surround yourself with people that are passionate about the same thing. That really helps. And also don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and do things that you wouldn't do in general to kind of be around football. So if you want to become a youth sport coach or just a CFL coach or an NFL coach, don't be afraid to just show up to a youth sport practice and just go to the coach and say, hey, can I give you help? Can I give you a hand today? Like, I'm passionate about football. I really want to help out. And you never know what's going to happen with that. So just don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and do things that you wouldn't do in general.
You know, I love that. And that's a must-have in officiating for sure. Like, we're taught at a young age that mistakes are bad, but I'm going to tell you, in officiating, mistakes, particularly early on, are good. They're going to make it so that when you get in a tough situation later on in your career, you know exactly how to handle it. Making all the mistakes, or an expert, just means that you've made all the mistakes. Like, seriously, that's the only reason that you see the people at the top level. They've made hundreds of mistakes and now they just know how to handle it. You know, they learned from them and moved on. It's okay to make mistakes. We expect you to make some. We encourage it, actually. It's going to make you a better official. It's going to make you lean on the rest of the crew. It's going to make you better. It's okay to make a mistake. We're not going to throw you out.
So that gives a perfect segue into our last question. We're just going to fit this last one in from the audience, from Shannon Kennedy. So Shannon's from the UK, and she was wondering how each of you deals with pressure or nerves that you experience from your own careers, whether that's from your own self or pressure from like external sources. So just speaking about making mistakes. So Laurence, I'll give that to you first.
I was just gonna say, I love the motto, fake it until you make it. So if you're super nervous about something, just pretend you're super confident, like, you know, your head up, have your head up high, and, you know, at the end, you're gonna be nervous, you're gonna feel the nerves, but you're gonna be fine. And then eventually, when you're doing the same thing all over again, you're gonna get more comfortable doing it.
Yeah, I really like that. And I'm curious for, let's say, Ameena, when you're writing down those lists of athletes that you think your team should look out for, how do you best think that, or be confident in those decisions that you've made, and get past those potential nerves if it's wrong, for example?
I would say just kind of combining what both of them had said. They tell us from day one, there's no right answers in scouting. You see all over the place where people think somebody's gonna be great and they're awful, or vice versa. The main thing that they ask us to do is not to be right. It's to have conviction in whatever you're saying. So if I'm there and I'm like, he might be a backup, he might be a starter, they're like, is he a backup or is he a starter? How do you see him? Do you like him? Do you not like him? And that kind of goes to, you know, just being confident in what you have to say. And it's going to be wrong sometimes. And that's how you build your portfolio. You're going to have wrong evaluations throughout your whole career. And that's how you learn how to scout. But yeah, I would say every presentation that we have, like, you have to do it with conviction.
Yeah, really important, the conviction point there. Desiree?
Yeah, love the fake it till you make it. Like, from jump, the first thing they tell us is to dress the part. So if you're looking to become an official, come with your uniform fitting. Don't come with faded stripes. If you're a white hat, come with a completely white hat. You know, stand up tall and talk directly to coaches and players, just simply explaining what you saw or what you didn't see. There may be times where something did happen. There was a hold on the other side of the field, but you didn't see it. Be simply honest about it. It's going to be repetition, repetition, repetition. You're going to need to see things about 100 times before somebody will come up to you and try to tell you something different. And you're just like, man, get out of here. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I've got it. This is what's going on. This is what's going to happen. And you're going to learn to lean on your team as well. They're going to make you confident. Like, even if you don't have everything, that's why there's more than one of us on the field. Somebody else has that different perspective. Somebody else has information that can help you piece things together to make everything work and the game flow.
And I feel like that's so transferable to life in general, just everyday interactions, everyday tasks, just being confident in all those things that you do. So we really, really thank you and everyone tuning in to listen to this great pieces of advice, great information to take with you, hopefully for whatever career path, even if it's beyond football in the future. So we're very thankful for our panelists here today.